Welcome to the Coach Dave Love podcast with NBA shooting coach Dave Love and your host, Matt Robertson, exploring the cutting edge of evidence-based shooting development in basketball today, from shooting form to skill acquisition to shot metrics. This is the Coach Dave Love podcast.
Welcome to the Coach Dave Love podcast. I'm your host, Matt Robertson. I'm here with Coach Dave Love and Coach Nick Sullivan. How are we, fellas?
Good. Great. Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm fired up about this, fellas. Nick Sullivan is a graduate assistant coach at Gonzaga University. Nick, I want you to give us not the elevator pitch, but the 3-story stairwell pitch on how that happened, and give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my first job was at an NAIA school called Northwest Christian University in Eugene, Oregon. I played there, so it was kind of an easy transition. I did that for a year, and then I moved back home to Napa, California, and I worked at a school called Prolific Prep, and as a high school program and in a prep school program. So I was a prep school head coach for 2 years, and then I worked as a high school with our high school guys, and we had a lot of talented players, a lot of Division I players. So got to make really good connections, and I got connected at Gonzaga, and this is my second year here at Gonzaga. So it's been really, really fun.
Very cool. Napa Valley must be tough. I live in Atlantic time, which is literally as far away from your Pacific time zone as we can get. So I'm a little envious, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Awesome. So obviously today on the Coach Dave Love podcast, give me a look why connect with Dave Love? What was the impetus to reach out? How did you find him? How did you become aware of him? What's the connect here?
Yeah, I reached out on Twitter, but it kind of all started with I've done player development stuff in the past, and then here at Gonzaga, that was kind of my main role. So I started trying to dive into as much information as I can with the podcast. On Twitter, there's a lot of good information. And then, I stumbled upon Dave, and shooting's the most important thing in our game. So why not ask one of the best shooting coaches in the United States and the world. So I was actually a little bit shocked that he returned my direct message on Twitter and wanted to talk. So I'm like, wow, this is a perfect world for me. I get to learn, develop a relationship, and then selfishly it helps myself improve, it helps my players, and then help me in my future job. So it's been really, really cool being able to pick his brain for the last couple of months.
Yeah, Nick, you did, and this is it. You did something smart where you've got your bio and you've got credibility on your bio on Twitter. And so when I saw Gonzaga University, why wouldn't I reply to this person? And I've done similar things where when I worked for the Orlando Magic, I wanted to connect with coaches in other sports. I want to connect with golf coaches and tennis coaches to sort of learn how shooting is sort of an individual skill within a team. It is an individual skill within a team game. And can I learn something from coaches of individual sports? And one of the people I messaged was Annika Sorenstam, who is probably one of the greatest female golfers, if not the greatest female golfer of all time. And her publicist or whoever handles her Twitter replied right away, and I just explained who I was, and she's like, "Oh yeah, she'll spend an hour with you at the driving range." And so I hung out for an hour and a half with the greatest female golfer ever, and she was a delight. And so I think that's a great little networking skill. If you have some credibility in your situation, make sure it's featured. Then just be a polite person and take a shot. And I respond more than I don't.
Yeah. No, I was that was you've been great, and you responded quickly. So I'm just surprised there wasn't more people. I know you probably have a ton of people messaging you, so I was just happy that you gave me the time. So
one of the things that Dave said to me in the lead up to this podcast is I was like, oh, cool. Like, I don't know Nick Sullivan, but like, why? He's like, man, he just asks the kind of questions that are so fun to talk about. And it just becomes a legit conversation. And so I'm kind of fired up. I know you have some stuff kind of prepared, and I don't want to rush us into it, but I also am kind of excited to get started. So fire me up. What do you have?
Yeah. So I think this is our fourth or fifth session, Dave.
Yeah,
So
about that.
um
Yeah. Describe
yeah,
what you
yeah.
mean by session. When you say session, describe for the people listening, like what 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 have we done in the past?
I got all my notes right here actually. You want me to walk through every no,
Well,
I'm just
just
kidding.
like when we talk on the phone, and each conversation is probably started with like a plan of being like just a couple of questions, just like let me borrow like 7 minutes of your time, and each one has turned into like a really good 40-minute discussion about
Yeah.
something that's taken a couple of turns along the way. And each time I've kind of thought like this needs to be a podcast. We like this is what I want the podcast to be, and that's why I suggested to you in the last one, like, would you come on and ask these questions, because the questions that you have are the same questions I think a lot of people have. So
Yeah.
what kind of things have we talked about? I don't even remember necessarily.
Yeah, we were so we talked a lot about block versus variable versus random practice. Um External cues, um what else? Knowledge of results versus knowledge of process. And then there's yeah, we have touched on a whole bunch of different things. Challenge point was a big one.
What are you looking at right
But
now? Because I know, or I think I have an idea of what you're looking at. What are you looking at off camera when
oh, I have my pages of notes in here. So I should have consolidated them for I didn't know you were gonna ask me to summarize them.
no,
But
I know that, like, that's why I want people to understand, like, at the level you're at, which is a very, very high level, like you got there because you have certain skills. And one of the skills is caring and being diligent and thoughtful about how you're doing something, and that involves taking notes sometimes. And I remember you saying, I think in our last conversation, like, I've got a page and a half of notes from our last talk or something to that effect. I'm like, okay, like that just earns more credibility. Again, I'm willing to give more time um
yeah.
to somebody that shows they care. So great job by you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. I really want to learn, and the thing is I've had all these I've been taught all these things my whole life about shooting, and I'm trying to almost, okay, is this the right thing or is this just something I was taught? You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of how basketball is now. There's so much research with skill acquisition, and there's just so much more information and more money being dedicated to the sport. So it's like I almost have all my preconceived notions and I'm testing them against actual real physical researched data, which is awesome being able to bounce those off you.
Nick, it's funny. I make fun of Dave all the time. I say he's got a fun little data project on the go, but it's like it's like, man, all we care about is makes and misses, and then what a guy looks like in a workout. Like, oh, that looks pretty good, and the ball's kind of coming out his hand well, but like,
Yeah.
like that's all we care about. And Dave's like, no, like what actually matters?
Yeah, and I think this could actually lead into my one of my first questions. And Dave, it was on, in some of our last conversations, you mentioned everybody's body is different and not everybody shoots the same.
Right.
So, kind of my first little question is when you're looking at a kid, I know Tyrese Halliburton is kind of everybody always talks about his shot.
Right.
If you have a kid that's shooting it pretty well, but doesn't have some of the principles that you like what is the point that you change the person's shot or you adjust things, or it's wow, this is going in, so I'm kind of gonna let him continue shooting.
Yeah, that's a great starting point, and probably like a great first question for every player, like new player that we meet and work with is, do we even need to change anything? And so I always make the joke. I am a dad, and so my jokes are all repetitive. If you listen long enough, you're going to hear them all several times. And but the joke that I make is, I like, if you can drop kick it in 40% of the time in games, and if it were legal, I'd let you do it. Like, I don't care how you do it. If you can get it to go in 80% of the time for the free throw line and 40% from three in games, do it however you want. And then the next level, like the next layer is, and then will you be able to do it at the next level, like when you progress from high school to college or college into pro, will it still work? And that's harder to figure out. Unfortunately, I don't have to worry about that part. Working in the NBA, like, we don't have anything that people are trying to get to necessarily. If you can make it work here, there's nowhere harder than here. So, but that is a challenge that especially young kids have to be focused on. Is, I know you made a decent percentage, or if you think of yourself as a good shooter, shooting with two hands against your other 12-year-olds, but they're going to get better. The windows are going to get smaller to shoot through, and your complex shot might just get too complex in hard environments later on. So I always start with, like, what are their game percentages? And then, do I trust it? And that's a lot more subjective. So Matt, help me out. So objective and subject. I always, that and effect and effect. I always have to break it down for a second. But so can they do it in games at the level they're at? And do I believe it's going to hold up at the next level? And I always say to players, you want to figure out if your complex shot or your bad habits will hold up at the next level. Start playing against the next level. Like, you're 14 years old, go play against 16-year-olds. And if you all of a sudden can't make an open shot, you're getting an indicator. If you're a college guy, like, get down to UCLA and in the summer and start playing against some of the pros, and like, or when the alumni come back, play against those guys. If you're all of a sudden having trouble shooting the percentages that you're used to shooting, then you're getting some indicators that it's too complex and you might need to simplify.
I have a kind of a interjection here. So Nick, at your level, like, how often do you see guys come up from high school and it takes them a minute to kind of find that pace and that for their brains to match their bodies, I guess? Like, do you see that very often?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is just the most guys that come to our level, they're, taller or more athletic, and they can get their shot off. The game's not as fast or as athletic. So one of the biggest things that we do right away, like all of our guys coming in the summer, is try to speed up their release. I think that's the biggest thing for us, is speed up your release so you can get it off more. If you can't, if you shoot 50%, but can only get 1-3 every couple games, then you're not that good of a shooter. You know what I mean? You need to be able to get it off quickly, at least at our level, if you want to be an elite shooter. So
Nick,
I think that's the biggest one is,
how do you guys go? Obviously, there's some proprietary information that you may not want to share, but, like, how do you go about speeding up a guy's like, what does that mean to you personally?
Yeah. So that was, I also wanted to run this by you, but some of our terminology would be ball in the air, feet in the air. A lot of times we see guys that catch it and then they 1-2, or they catch it and then they do their hop, depending on what their preference is. I know they need to be able to shoot multiple different ways, but ball in the air, feet in the air, and just kind of being ready to shoot. And is that So the shot preparation, what are you looking for in a shot preparation, Dave?
Yeah, similar ideas. Like I don't I use the expression ball in the air, feet in the air. I think it's a great little cue to kind of create some engagement. Like there was a book, I think it's called Men at Work. It's a baseball book where they do like a section on fielding written by Cal Ripken Jr. and a section on hitting written by Tony Gwynn and a section on who's now these are old references, but these are like Hall of Famers, like not pretty
Yeah.
good baseball. These are the best at that skill of that time. And the pitching was either Oral Hershiser or Greg Maddux. Doesn't really matter. Like whichever one of those it was, great pick. And Cal Ripken Jr. talked about like he would try and time it, basically pitch in the air, feet in the air for him, so that when contact was made bat to ball, ball to bat to ball, that his feet would be hitting the ground and he'd be in sort of ready stance, being able to react either direction. And so like it's just a great cue to just create some readiness. And whether I don't necessarily get too hung up on like are their feet actually in the air, but that idea of all right, ready yourself is a great one. And all these things like we're just to me speeding up the releases, and you're there as well, is just be more efficient. You're not actually making the release faster. Like if you're trying to shoot the ball faster, get the ball moving faster, then the ball's going to go further, and you might not want it to go further. You want it to go the correct distance, not more distance. So just shooting it faster is not going to necessarily help. You have to shoot it more efficiently. You have to trim the fat. You have to get rid of the things that are causing inefficiencies, and then you're just left with a finite amount of time that it can't go faster than that. It's got to go that speed to get the ball traveling. That's the speed that you want it to travel.
Yeah. And are you trimming the fat? Would you have like your hands, like we would have it where our feet, we would call it being loaded. So not in a deep stance, but having your knees bent, and then also having your hands catch ready to shoot, or
Yeah, like that's so in just about every drill that I do, or every habit that I'm working on, and I think we may have talked about this a couple of times, but maybe not actually. In every drill or habit that we're trying to work on, I'll try to identify specifically what do I want the person to do, and then I'll make the environment really easy so they can do that. But then once they're getting comfortable with that, the skill isn't being able to do the perfect thing. The skill is being able to get close to the perfect or optimal or ideal thing in hard environments. So my first drills will be to guide them towards doing the right thing. And then my next level will be put them in situations where it's actually hard to do the right thing, but then get me as close as you can. So taking our example of being shot ready, I'll start with like, okay, start shot ready. And then when the ball's in the air being passed to you, just maintain that body posture, get your feet in the air, catch it on the hop, like really, really simple perfection kind of drill with a little bit of variability in it. And then I'll say like, okay, you got to start with your hands behind your back. You got to start on one foot. You got to like, I'll literally put an obstacle in their way. You're going to drift to the corner. I need you on the catch to be shot ready, but I'm going to have somebody standing between you and the corner, and you've got to figure out how to get around them. And so they'll either shade towards the middle of the court, and you've got to go towards the sideline, or they'll shade towards the sideline, and you've got to go to the middle of the court. Negotiate all that, figure all that out, and then land shot ready. to I'll physically have guys wrestle. Like we'll start at the Matt, did you and I do this one in Las Vegas with a player that we won't name? I think we did.
Yeah, it was hilarious too because I'm an old man, and young players are not old men, but that was a lot of fun. But also like to see the amount of athleticism and strength it took to get off the offensive lineman, holding the shoulder pads to slide and still catch balance and ready to go. Like really impressive to see at that level.
Yeah, so the drill will be like you and I will be standing at the break, Nick. You're the shooter. I'm the defender. Matt's the passer wherever Matt's standing. He's got the basketball, and I'll say it. I want a 3-second wrestling match where me as the defender, I'm allowed to grab you, I'm allowed to hold you, I'm allowed to, and if you can end the wrestling match within the 3 seconds, then great, end it. Like throw me off you. Like, but if you can't, then after 3 seconds, I'm gonna let you win. And now you got to go from like, I'll physically grab a guy's shirt and grab him around the waist and try and get him off balance. And he's got to then throw me out of the way and get to the corner. And while all that's happening, self-organize. So like taking it to the extreme of this hopefully is harder than the game. And you're not going to get to the perfect position, but can you get close in a hard environment? Like that's the skill that we should be practicing, I believe. Not doing it perfectly every time, doing it well and repeatably in hard situations.
Hey there, basketball fans. I'm NBA shooting coach Dave Love, and I've got exciting news just for you. Introducing my exclusive, free basketball shooting newsletter. It's packed with insights and techniques straight from the hardwood. Have you ever wondered how NBA players improve their shots? Or how you could get to the next level, whether you're a college player, a coach, or a budding youth player? My newsletter brings all this and more directly to your inbox. Each edition is a deep dive into the world of basketball shooting. I'll share some of the tips and ideas that I use with my NBA clients, tailored for every level of the game. But wait, there's more. Subscribers receive exclusive monthly discounts on my online products. From training videos to personalized coaching sessions, you'll get it all for a fraction of the price. And the best part of all, it's absolutely free to join. So what are you waiting for? Elevate your game and join a community of passionate players and coaches from around the globe. Signing up is easy. Just visit CoachDaveLove.com.
Would you be doing that? That's only with your elite players, guys that are really or would you do that with everybody?
Most of the drills that I do, I'll do with anybody. I'll do the really, really basic stuff, if necessary, with an NBA All-Star, if that's the level of challenge that person needs at time. And then I'll do complicated things, like a lot of balance stuff. 12-year-olds can handle, or should be able to handle, like some very complex balance situations. So it wouldn't be necessarily on day one, but it might be on day one where, some kids you have to start with stand straight up and then ball in the air, feet in the air, land, engage. Sometimes that's too hard for particular 12-year-olds. Like they just don't have the athleticism to be able to go from standing to balance quickly. Most can figure it out. And so then, just keep making the situation harder and harder and harder. And once they're not falling over anymore, which happens pretty quickly, then you can make it pretty complicated for most kids.
Yeah. And are you the balancing stuff? Are you doing that most of the time, every workout, or just, kind of depends? Or is that something like maybe you start out with to kind of get them warm? Or
Yeah, no, I joke with again, I do make the same jokes over and over and over again. So my joke is like, when I write a book on shooting, one of the chapters is going to be stop doing stationary form shooting. I think I even posted it on Instagram yesterday, like stop doing stationary form shooting. Shots involve movement. before them. So we need to practice the skill of stopping moving and then shooting. Like the transition from one skill into the next is something we should be practicing. You don't practice shooting in a vacuum. You practice it in a game context as much as you put. Matt is dying to say something.
Like the old man, just like, but that's how you warm up for shooting. Like, that's the conventional, that's the conventional mentality of how we've always done it. And every part of me, and for shooting for the last 35 years, says, well, we warm up before shooting. You know what I mean? Like, it's so funny to hear you say that, because I know that there's a lot of data and experience behind that, but like, everything my coach ever taught me was that. So it's funny.
Yeah, and one of the things Nick and I have done is like we will have a chat and we'll come to a moment like this, and I'll say, you need to go look up such and such. And one of them, as Nick mentioned earlier, was internal, external cues, block variable, random practice. What else did you mention? Knowledge of process, knowledge of results. This one will be linear and non-linear pedagogy. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Your pedagogy basically your I didn't know the word before, so I'll explain it assuming most people don't know. Maybe everybody else is way smarter than me. But like the process of learning. And so linear is get good at this, then move on to that, then get good at that and move on to this in progressively harder and harder stages. And it's shown we don't learn that way. And that's how 8 years ago, that's how I would have practiced. Master at isolation drill. When you do isolation drill well, then I'm moving on to ABC. When you do ABC, then I'm moving on to slow to quick, and then I'll add movement, and then I'll add distance, and then and that would have been my progression to just slowly make things harder. And I still kind of do that, but in a much more non-linear fashion, where it's like, if the alphabet are the stages, I'll still go through ABC, D, ABC, D, ABC, D, E, F, B, C, D, E, F, and like the stock market going up, it doesn't go up every day. Like sometimes we have to backtrack, and we have to, and I'll introduce things way earlier. I'll introduce ideas like defenders and decisions in workout number 1 while doing form shooting. Whereas I would have, 8 years ago, I would have waited a couple of months before introducing a defender. Now, that doesn't mean I'm introducing a live defense. I'm introducing like a person standing next to you and a person with their hand up as a defender, or giving you an either or reaction. Sometimes in the first 20 minutes of a workout, and just trying to add as much variability as I can, while keeping the practice simple enough to get the habit that we're working on correct.
Fellas, this is awesome. I want to take a super quick break, and we can continue on the same subject, but we're just going to take a quick break.
Hey basketball fans, Coach Dave Love here with an exclusive offer just for you, my personalized video shot analysis. Imagine having an NBA shooting coach analyze your shooting form, just like I do for the pros. That's exactly what you'll get with my video shot analysis. Here's how it works. You send me a video of your shot, and I'll break it down frame by frame. I'll pinpoint your strengths and identify the areas of improvement and give you tailored advice to take your shot to the next level. You'll receive a comprehensive analysis designed just for you. Whether you're a beginner or an aspiring pro, my feedback will help you shoot with confidence and precision. It isn't just feedback, it's a game changer. With my video shot analysis, you're not just practicing, you're evolving, and every single shot counts. Ready to transform your game? Visit CoachDaveLove.com/store to learn more and get started. That's CoachDaveLove.com/store and look for video shot analysis.
Welcome back. And we're going to keep going with the pedagogy and educational theory. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I think, okay, that's how you said it, pedagogy, because I listened to Alex Samara. I think that's how you
Alex
pronounce it. He's English. Yeah, so he says it way different. I don't know.
Oh,
because of his accent. So I can't really tell if it's pedagogy or pedagogy. So
And honestly, I don't know either. And like I like this is what I try and be really upfront about. Like Matt and I talked about when we were talking about the podcast is I'm not an expert in this stuff. There are people that I hope to have on the podcast, and Alex is one of those guys that are way smarter about the skill acquisition things. I'm just trying to give people a glimpse into. I'm aware of these ideas. I think I have a really strong understanding of them, and then how do I use these ideas in what I do? And like a great example will be like the research shows variable practice translates better to games than block practice, but that doesn't mean block practice can't be used. And so like I use it as a tool sparingly here and there for very particular reasons, because it also does transfer to a game, just not as well. So like just trying to build, like I think it's really important for coaches to be aware of the science of skill acquisition, and it's startling how many high level coaches aren't even aware that this exists out there, never mind understanding any of it. And then I'm hoping that just by understanding the general concepts that I'm going to be ahead of the curve. And that if I just keep having these conversations, there's going to be people that are smarter about it that will correct me when I kind of go a little off course or when I get something a little bit wrong. So I want coaches to feel open to say, I don't know I didn't know what it was 8 years ago.
Like part of what we're trying to build here with the Coach Dave Love podcast is a bit of community. And so Nick, again, you're part of the community, and the reason you're here is because you were in that community. And if people have done some skill acquisition research and have some data and they're like, actually, Coach Dave, like push my glass, actually, that wasn't quite right. Like, please fire up Twitter, fire up Instagram, whatever, and reach out, because we want to grow. Part of this podcast want to have a growth mindset, and I want to grow in my knowledge, and Dave wants to grow in his knowledge, and everybody that we have on to have some kind of impact on our community. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to derail too heavy, but appreciate you, Dave. And if you're out there and we've said something that is not quite right, please reach out and let us know.
Yeah, and I think I started doing more and more research on the shooting stuff, because we had a really good player that I was working with. He was a redshirt last year, and we worked out every day. And we were doing more block practice things, and I'm like, this kid he's too good of a shooter. So then just naturally I was like, all right, I have to start throwing bad passes. He has to start switching up his footwork every shot. And then I was getting confirmation through, I think, a lot of Chris Oliver stuff, and then talking to you as well. And just so now I'm trying to do a different shot every single rep. Whether that's changing locations, passing the ball. A lot of times, if we are doing something stationary, I'll just say you have to switch your footwork every single time. Is that kind of and also, actually, one question. I know we've talked about it. I do a lot of like competition drills with him, and we kind of talked about, if you're building a habit, maybe don't use competition drills if you're trying to build a new habit. Is that what you're thinking, Dave?
So that goes back to that knowledge of process, knowledge of results. And so by attaching a score to a game, or a drill, or saying a certain number of makes to move on, we've just indirectly told the player the most important thing is to get the result. Now, if that player is a good shooter, then I think that's decent advice. Like if the guy can make shots, then yeah, get me a result. If you're working on a particular habit, that should be more knowledge of process. And so I would focus more with a weaker shooter on not the result, because I want to change the process that in time will help you get the result. The process is the more important part in with that kind of a shooter than than the result is. And so it really depends on who you're working with and how good they are at the skill that you're working on. And LeBron James, one of the best players ever, isn't a great shooter and is I think actually poor at one part of his shot. So even though he's a great shooter, we're not, or even though he's a great player, we're not working on him as a player. We're working on a skill within the shot. And if you're poor at that, I'm going to focus more on the knowledge of process in the beginning than the knowledge of results. So you have to be really careful with if you give a score to something, are you directing attention away from the thing that you want attention given to? That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've struggled with is when one of our players is making a mistake, and I've been with one of our players for over a year and a half, so we have a couple key things that we're focusing on. At what point do you ask him, every time he makes one of our kids, his follow through is normally really good, and then at random times he'll just kind of throw his follow through, and at every single time, are you saying, hey, how did that feel? Or did you notice something different? Or are you kind of letting him go and letting him figure it out? Or are you drawing attention every single time a good shooter or, somebody that's working on a habit is making a mistake?
Great question. I had an answer a second ago and then I just lost it.
Nick, this is
okay. So, sorry, Matt.
I was gonna say, this is the kind of question where you broke Dave's brain just for a second.
I had two answers going in my head, and then I forgot the one that I wanted to start with because I was thinking about the second one. You said the mistake. So if a player makes a mistake, I don't coach mistakes. Mistakes happen. If the player does the same thing often, that's not a mistake now. That's a habit. I coach habits. And so if that follow through, that funky thing that you're seeing happens every 25 shots in challenging situations, then sounds like you have a pretty good level of practice going on. And hopefully they're aware when it happens. And it's just like, hey, you shot a less than perfect shot, because shooting in a game is hard. But if they're unaware or they're in a really easy situation and they keep making the same less than ideal habit or executing the same less than ideal habit, then yeah, I got to jump in and coach. And so I'll be trying to figure out what mistake or habit. And if it's a habit, then I'm coaching to it often. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily saying it. If I can tell they're aware, I don't need to say it. But if they're unaware, what did you feel on that one? And just by asking the question, they're like, oh, did I do it again? I saw it. Did you feel it? No, I didn't feel it. Okay, well, now our first challenge is getting you to feel it when it happens. If they go, shoot, yeah, I felt it that time. Okay, then that's we're further along the road when they can feel it.
Yeah, that happened today. I said, what'd you feel? We were doing like a combo shooting, and I said, what'd you feel on that one miss? He made 5 out of 6 shots, and he said, I don't know. I forgot about all those. I forgot about the miss. And I was like, you passed the test because we're telling him next shot mentality. So don't even think about the last shot. And I think I loved when you talked about this in one of our past sessions. When I was shooting, I'm not a great shooter, but somebody would say, okay, load your wrist, follow through, and gave me a whole bunch of different external or internal cues. And I loved how you said, I have my notes somewhere, but you said I focused on the things that would give me the greatest return. And maybe if you could expand on that a little bit, just because I know as coaches, It's like, oh, you did that wrong on this time, and then you did that wrong on this shot, and then the player's thinking about 5 different things,
Yeah.
and they're not getting any better.
Poor Matt is going to hear me tell this story. If we end up doing 100 episodes over the next couple of years, then he's going to hear this story probably about 20 times. I had a moment, it's probably one of my biggest coaching growth moments of my life, where I went to the driving range. And just like, I was playing a lot of golf at that time, and I went to the driving range, and I always tried to go, and if there was a lesson going on in one of the stalls, I'd try and be as close to the lesson so I just could kind of listen in, not for necessarily my game, like not trying to, but just like hearing how somebody else coaches. And I happened to get like the stall right beside a lesson going on with it, probably a 60-year-old coach and a woman of about the same age who was fairly new to golf. And this poor woman was given different feedback on every swing. So she swings the ball. He's like, oh, well, you opened your hips on that one. And so she's now giving her attention to don't open your hips. And he's like, oh, no, you casted your wrist on that one. Oh, okay, well, shoot. Do I think about the hips or the wrists or both the hips? Or there's probably a dialogue going on in her head. And then she swings the next one. He's like, oh, you lifted your head on that one. Well, do I add that to the list? Do I take something like, and he just, with every swing, kept giving her a new focus. And I'm thinking to myself, this poor woman, how is she supposed to get better at anything when you keep changing what she should be working on? And I made the declaration to myself. I decreed, one might say, to myself that day. And thank you for laughing, Matt. That's why you're here. That there's certain words I love, and decree is one of them.
Good word.
I said, like, next workout I do, we are declaring what we're working on that day, and then I'm only giving feedback on that thing. And I think that's, we don't necessarily need to go that strongly, but I try to avoid ever going above like 2 or 3 things to think about. Did that even come close to answering your question? I can't remember what the question was now, but I know it was sort of related to. So
no, that was perfect.
Yeah, so try and like be really, I do it at the beginning of every workout. What are we working on today? Like, what habit? And hopefully they're saying the same answer they said yesterday. And then within drills, like, I'll stop, if we're doing a half-hour workout, I'll stop 3 or 4 different times and just like, what was our biggest habit? Like, what are we really trying to, if I feel like they need a reminder, I'll make them say it again. Like, trying to get my feet wider, trying to get my, like, whatever it is.
Hey there, basketball fans. Coach Dave Love here with an exciting opportunity to revolutionize your shooting game. Introducing my exclusive shot development systems, Pure Release, Consistency and Balance, and Fluidity and Arc. Each system is designed to target key aspects of your shooting technique, transforming you into a more effective player on the court. Pure Release focuses on perfecting your shot release. Consistency and Balance enhances your stability and accuracy, and Fluidity and Arc works on your ball path and trajectory of your shot. Find out the drills and progressions that I use with my NBA players to improve these important habits. Can't decide which one to choose? No worries, grab the bundle and get all 3 systems at a fantastic value. It's a complete package to elevate every part of your shooting game. And there's a special deal for all my podcast listeners. Use the promo code PODCAST20 at checkout to save 20% on any of the shot development systems. Don't miss this chance to train like the pros. Visit CoachDaveLove.com/store and take your first step towards shooting success. That's CoachDaveLove.com/store.
Welcome back. All right, Nick, I know we're kind of getting close to the end of our time here, but like, fire me up. What else you got there? This has been great so far.
Yeah, I think one thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is how do you give, this could go a whole bunch of different ways, but how do you give a player or shooter confidence in their shot. So, the reps, is it video? I know it probably change player to player. But Dave, what's one of the things that, I think you had Tristan Thompson, I just heard on the last podcast, that changed his hands. Was it Tristan Thompson that changed from right to left? And you've had, not great shooters that have turned into really good shooters. So what is the thing that kind of gives them confidence to go out there in game in front of everybody and be confident?
I'm gonna pick on a word that you use to kind of illustrate the point, and so don't take it personally. But we don't give confidence. Confidence is not given. It can work in the short term. If I attempt to give you confidence, I tell you things that make you confident, then maybe that works, but it's probably a coincidence that it works, and it's going to evaporate. It's going to go just as quickly as it was given, because it's fake. It's not real. Confidence isn't given. Confidence is developed. And I always say confidence is not a product that can be transferred. It's a byproduct of something else. It's a byproduct of, I've done the work. I've seen the results. I know I'm capable of this. That's when your confidence grows. So I can only put you in positions where you can see yourself having success. And then I've got to make the situations that you're seeing yourself have success resemble the forum that you need to execute in. So me putting you in a position to have success doing stationary form shooting 5 feet from the basket will make you more confident about doing form shooting 5 feet from the basket, but it's not going to make you more confident in a meaningful, tangible way about executing a game, because the environments are so different. I have to build that up so that you can eventually see yourself having success in things resembling a game, or hopefully in actual games. Now you have true confidence coming from the results that you've gotten in that situation. That's the only meaningful, long-lasting results. You have to get good before you get confident. You don't get confident and that makes you good, unfortunately. So
yeah, how quick are kind of the developments? Is it different for every player, but have you seen, large increases in percentage and efficiency within weeks, months, years?
For sure, months. And I mean, you said it's different for everybody, which is 100% true, because there's just so many variables. And then we don't have control as coaches over very many of I can control what you do when you're in front of me, but I can't control what you do when I'm not there. And so if you choose to go and spend a whole bunch of time undoing the habits that we're trying to build, then you're going to slow down the progress. And so I think months is reasonable. Like if you've got a dedicated player, I had Dwayne Dedman in Orlando, who completely changed his release, like went from a guy who brought the ball way back over top of his head, poor balance. We got 3 days together at the end of one season before he was gone off to, I think he was living in Dallas at the time. And I was going to be following a different player around. So we were going to try and work together after these 3 days remotely, where he was going to be sending me video. And I thought, this is not going to work. And it worked, because Dwayne Dedman worked. He sent me video every week, and then I took him through, okay, now add this to the drill. And he actually did it. And we walked into training camp, and I'm like, okay, let's see how this actually looks. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, you change. And that's from May 1st to September 1st. Without the coach even in the gym. He got coaching, but it was like, why? Because he invested. He took control over the situation. So that completely changed it, and was good, ready to go to try and get results for a preseason. And of course, the feelings of doing it in an empty gym and the feeling of doing it in front of 20,000 people for the first time is another little adjustment. But we had to go through a preseason and an early season to start to get familiarity in that kind of environment. And but he went from 55% from the free throw line, we don't want you shooting anything other than layups and dunks, to 75% from the free throw line, and like, okay, if you're open, shoot it. And then he became a 38% 3-point shooter and an 80+% free throw shooter. But started with those few months on his own. You can do it in that amount of time if you're willing to work.
Yeah, that is amazing. I always see in the NBA now, basically all the big guys are shooting corner threes, and guys that have never shot a three in their life, and they're shooting, 35%, 40% from three. That's remarkable. And
a testament to how talented they are.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me, or the scariest thing, is you need to have a ton of buy-in from each player, but correcting somebody's shot or changing their shot, and then them not having to buy in and just kind of having too much information and kind of being in between both shots, the change and the old shot.
Yeah, that's really the biggest challenge. That's probably a whole other podcast episode but yeah, you're right. It starts with, if they're not bought in, it's not going to work. And so your challenge at that point as a coach is how to get them bought in, like how to convince them that this can work if they do. That's the obstacle that needs to be conquered before you actually start the job of changing habits.
Yeah. And did I see on your website that you're doing shooting consulting stuff for, like, people can send in film, or is that?
I do a little bit of that. Thank you for the plug. If you go on coachdavelove.com, then you can get a video shot analysis done where I can take a look at your shot and break it down in detail. We probably played a commercial on this podcast at some point about video shot analysis. And then let's talk for a brief, like 2 minutes here, about what you asked initially in our first conversation. Like you made a request of, do you remember what that was? Like, you asked if you could come and like be a part of a clinic that I did, or
I did, yeah.
Spend a weekend and just kind of do this. And those are the sorts of things that we're going to start to offer in time, of like a coach's retreat of Phoenix, Arizona, or hopefully nice, convenient locations. Like, just come and let's dive into a lot of these details over the course of a weekend. And I want people to understand that, like, you're coaching at one of the highest levels in the world, and it's really competitive, and you're smart enough to be searching for an advantage. Where can I grow as a coach so that I can continue to grow my career? And so good on you for doing that.
Like, one of the things that we talk about in this podcast is actionable items, and we try to kind of tail off the podcast with an actionable piece. And I love that you asked that question, because like that's how I'm here today. That's how we became buddies, is that Dave was running a clinic and I went and volunteered, learned, chatted, grew into like, oh, let's link up a little bit, linked up a bunch of, and here we are. And so I think again, I love how prepared you are. And I think that's a whole other section of actionable pieces, but putting yourself out there, reaching out, networking. I know we've said it before, but man, especially in this game where it's like head coach brings his guys, what's the connection? Who do you know? How do you know them? Like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And if you get rejected, like, it is what it is. You're in the same situation you were 5 minutes ago, but you never know what can happen. So anyway, sorry to cut you off, Nick. I'm really passionate about that as a human. And then again, even more so in the basketball circles, I just think it's such an important lesson, whether you're a kid, a low-level coach, a high-level coach, whatever it is. I just think that is one of the most important things that we can really hammer home.
Yeah, you got to keep learning, or else, if you don't keep learning, you're not going to get any better, and people are going to pass you up. So shooting's the most important thing. I think I already mentioned that. Most important thing in our game, and can't be anybody better than Dave. So it's been really fun picking you guys' brain and developing a relationship with both of you guys.
Nick, will you come
Nick
back
Sullivan.
to the podcast in a month or so, and we'll do this again?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll start my questions all over again.
Perfect.
It will be a prerequisite that you hold up your notes for the YouTube audience, just so we can kind of get a good look at what you're working with. Nick Sullivan, Gonzaga graduate assistant coach. If people want to reach out to you, if you're comfortable, where can they find you?
Yeah, on Twitter. I honestly don't really even know my Twitter handle.
Okay.
Is that what you call it now? Twitter handle?
I call it
I'm
Twitter, so
aging
I'm not going to
myself.
say I'm on X.
Oh, I forgot it was X. I forgot.
Let me-
My X is _Nick_Sullivan. So, yeah, and I'm sure you guys might post it on the show notes or whatever. So,
Yeah.
I encourage everyone out there to reach out if you have extra questions. Coach Dave Love, where can people find you if they have other questions?
Coach Dave Love on just about everything.
All the things. Thanks for sticking with us for this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe. You can find us all the places you find your podcast. Really appreciate you. Appreciate the community, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, Nick.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Coach Dave Love Podcast. To stay up to date with our future episodes, please remember to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to sign up for Coach Love's free shooting newsletter on CoachDaveLove.com, and be sure to follow him on social media. You can find him at Coach Dave Love.